Hello, everyone. Greetings, brothers and sisters and friends. Greetings, brother and sister Manichaeans. In the name of the Father of greatness, and of his Son Jesus the luminous, and of the living Spirit, I send you blessings and greetings.
Welcome to the Five Flames Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Morkett. Desiree's not here today. She's actually at work. I got a new job, of course, which I've already covered. We'll go into that right now. I'm recording on a Friday by myself. You might hear Gus, our American Bulldog, kind of stomp around. He's got some big old paws. He's a cute, thick boy. And anyway, if he comes by, we'll say hi to him. But anyway, let's get into today's topic. It is apparently there was a debate that happened 2 weeks ago, about 15 days ago. White versus Flowers. Does John 6:44 teach unconditional election? And in that, I'm going to cover one thing and one thing only. If you want in-depth analysis of the debate, then you can check out. There's some Calvinists that covered it. Just go to YouTube and search that up. You can go. There's tons of provisionalists that have covered it, and of course, you can go check them out. And then I recommend The Wise Disciple. I will put his analysis down below because he is a former debate teacher and a pastor. And I've email exchanged with him, and he seems like just a really super sweet guy to talk to, and a very humble guy. And yeah, so I always enjoyed my exchange and email with him. And he was very helpful to me when I was preparing for the Manichaean debate on some just some pointers for cross-examination. And of course, we've covered that. The Manichaean debate did not happen. And yeah, so let's get into this. Let's get into this and see what's going on. So in the debate, there was an exchange in cross-ex. Leighton Flowers brought up Rob the reprobate. And what if Rob died while he was an infant? What say you, James White? So here we go. Go ahead and let's take a look.
All right. Let's pick up back with Rob the reprobate, okay? Let's say Rob the reprobate, he's obviously held guilty for something he has absolutely no control over because he's by default a hater of God. He's born that way. He can't help it.
False assumption. I'm not going to bother with answering questions based on false assumption.
I'm using your words. By default, they are unable to believe. That's your words.
There was a whole lot more to the expression of default.
Okay.
Okay, I want to stop right there. We're going to look at an accusation that Flowers makes, many provisionalists make against White. He's hiding behind, right here, this is Evan. I've actually had dinner with Evan. He's a very nice man. I've had dinner with Dr. White. Dr. White is all Dr. White all the time, it seems like. So, there's a lot of opinions about Dr. White, but we had a great talk. We talked about towing and diesel engines, and we talked about cycling because I used to be really big into cycling. We talked about cycling, and I had a little private conversation with him afterwards, and he was very. I've met him twice, and the first time I would say don't meet your heroes, and the second time we met, it was a very good conversation we had because he was relaxing at dinner, and the first time I met him, he was preaching. So and he was all business. So there's been accusation that White is hiding behind the moderator, Evan, Pastor McClanahan, for what's about to happen. And let's just see what happens. Also, you've already just seen Evan sort of correct Flowers, and keep him on task. So the task at hand is debate John 6:44. And they're, both White and McClanahan are like, what's going on? What, you've got to stick to the topic. So here we go.
Thank you. All right. So this man, Rob, was guilty because of Adam's sin. You mentioned that. And so if Rob had been aborted when he was a baby, or he died when he was an infant, would he have faced the same fate as a non-elect infant?
Oh my goodness. Mr. Moderator, are we going to stick to John 6, or are we going to start wandering into
Dr. White,
everything?
Dr. White,
everything
Dr.
else?
White, haven't you said inconsistency is a mark of a failed argument? And isn't
Yes.
Calvinism very inconsistent with how they answer the question
No.
as to what happens to
No,
infants
but
who
if you
die?
look, but we came here to debate John chapter 6, and you're trying to drag it onto other things, which is what you've done before.
I'm
And
talking.
I am asking that you focus upon the text and the meaning of the text, and not get into all sorts of other subjects that do not allow me to even have the opportunity of making a meaningful presentation on the subjects that have not been raised and are not a part of the subject this evening.
The question of the debate is not who can exegete the text in a way that Dr. White approves. It's a defense of Jesus' supposedly inconceivable teaching of unconditional election, which I'm demonstrating by this line of questions. It's demonstrably unjust and inconsistent within the ranks of Calvinism to say that people are condemned for something they have no control over. And what better illustrates that than an infant that dies?
Yeah, I realize that the subject of the debate is not something you want to pursue.
You
just
said
admitted that you are changing the topic of the debate.
Okay, before we get into McClanahan stepping in, so the accusation right now is White is saying you are changing the debate. So the debate is over. Does John 6:44 teach unconditional election? What we're about to see is Flowers is taking the opportunity to debate Calvinism. Okay, he's taking the opportunity to debate Calvinism. White wants to debate John 6:44. Flowers loves, and this is a tactic that he has, and we're about to see, like he thinks it's great. I'm going to call it meatloaf. He love, and this is sort of this is soteriology 101. This is their thing. Calvinism's wrong. Calvinism's bad. It's not the gospel. And then you'll have guys who all the way for like, hey, you know what? There's some great Calvinist teachers, and I appreciate them, and they do missions. But I just disagree. All the way to Calvinism is a cult, and we are anathema. We are damned. We are false teachers. And there's everywhere in between. Okay. So what you're about to see is McClanahan step in because, again, Flowers loves to take the opportunity. He debates Calvinism. So like I was saying, he takes as much meatloaf in his hand, scoops it up, big old scoop of meatloaf, and he throws it against the wall. And then he wants to see what sticks. So what's been sticking, has been infant salvation, because for God's sake, somebody think about the children. You're not thinking about the children. So here we go. The moderator is about to step in. Oops. Oh.
Dr. White, I think that you want to avoid that particular issue. Is it true that you want to avoid that particular issue because you point out, even to John MacArthur and John Piper's view, you point out the reasons that you don't think they're correct, points to the very point of up for debate with regard to unconditional election?
No, it has nothing to do with John chapter 6 at all.
It has to do with your interpretation of John chapter 6, believing that Jesus is
completely
teaching.
Other subjects that we do not have time to make presentations on that will be useful. This is simply your way to avoid the fact that you can't deal with John 6.
Okay, all right, I have to call a timeout. We either have to bring the cross-examination to a close, or...
All right, well, I'll move on.
I gather that there has been a debate in the last couple of weeks that has come up about infants and things like that. I'm going to make the call.
I will move on. I'll move on. It's fine. Okay. Are students in your class...
Okay, so let's go to another podcast, and let me share this tab instead. Thank you. This is Flowers on the Provisionalist podcast. And there's a couple of guys here. I recognize there's Flowers. I don't really listen to that guy a lot. Don't listen to that guy a lot. I think that's the idol killer guy, which I purposely stay away from him because of reasons. And they usually have to do with blood pressure. So anyway, let's take a look. Dive in here real quick and see if I queued it up right. And let's see, because again, Flowers loves to debate Calvinism. So everything wrong with Calvinism, that's his thing. His isn't. So he has quit his full-time positions. He's now just a professor, and he does Soteriology 101. I believe, if I'm mistaken, somebody can correct me if you're listening.
I think that you already kind of brought this regret in, and so I can piggyback off of it and then ask you a question on it. It seemed, I don't think I'm going out on a stretch, that your line of questioning in the cross exam to go after the sticky points of unconditional election and kind of hold his feet to the fire a little bit, which was effective because he looked weak and appealing to the moderator. And I have a question coming, but as a side note, I think it's hilarious that one of the main draws of Calvinism, and one of the things that we always encounter with Calvinism, is that they're the big strong men. They're the manly men who believe the hard truths and say the hard things in the culture war, and they're the staunch conservatives. And yet, when you shouldn't white men be able to take on all comers and answer all questions strongly, and instead of being like, oh, the moderator, could you instruct him to?
Yeah, not only that, not only that, Eric, one, you can only debate my proof texts. You have to, and you can only use a Greek New Testament, and you can't have notes, and you can't ask hard questions about the logical implications of unconditional election. What other restrictions would you like to put on your opponent before you debate them, Dr. White? I mean, come on, man up and have a debate.
Okay, I just want to speak to this. As we're going to see, as we're going to look at McClanahan's blog, because he actually addresses this very issue. And I don't know if anybody on YouTube has even talked about this. Okay, so he addresses this very issue. Okay, Flowers, you're not listening to this. Provisionalist, if you're listening to this, okay, when you have a debate, all right, and I have gone through at least this part firsthand. We didn't sign a contract, but we had an arrangement, an agreement. We would talk about this specific topic. Okay, so our topic with the Manichaeans was Manichaeanism better addresses the problem of evil than Christianity. Okay, that is what we were going to talk about. Okay, and in fact, what we're going to find out is they signed a contract. This is the topic. So, Flowers, you agreed. Now, I don't know how much you agreed to, but we do know there is a contract and there was a topic, and you agreed to talk about that topic. So when you veer off from the topic, you signed a contract. You agreed to it. Don't agree to it, right? Don't agree to the debate if you think there's an issue. Don't agree. Or negotiate different terms, okay? Because you signed the contract. You said, I will do these things. So for you to come back, it just slightly seems like you agreed to this, and then you're like, nah, that's cool. I know I agreed to it, but what I'm actually going to do is this thing over here, which again is debate all of the sticky points of Calvinism as opposed to just John 6:44 and unconditional election. You could have, I don't know, off the top of my head, you could have asked a question, for example, in cross, like, Dr. White, in the drawing, does this include infants? Okay, where do infants come into place in the drawing? How do they hear and learn from God? I don't know. That's just an example of a question. It might be a horrible question, but what Flowers likes to do, and this is what he did in the Romans 9 debate. He puts Calvinism on the dock, not the particular passage or chapter or verse. He wants to debate Calvinism. All of it. All of it's available. And as you're going to see, he took the platform to do this. And anyway, let me just play the video. Let me just play the rest of the video.
I thought a warrior could take on all comers, right? Stand on the hill and plant your flag and let's go. But okay, so that was very effective in getting him to run away to the moderator. But do you regret going that way so then it didn't leave you time to address a lot of the other hermeneutical issue, the hermeneutics and reading it backwards and all that? Do you kind of like think that maybe that choice, as the debate turned out, didn't leave you enough time to do those things?
No, it's one of my proudest moments in the debate, actually, because
awesome.
it highlights, at least for me, it highlights the Achilles heel of the entire Calvinistic worldview, because if the one of the leading Calvinistic apologists is willing to appeal to a moderator to rescue him, it shows this is such a weak, inconsistent point of doctrine within the Calvinistic worldview that I'm not willing to be cross-examined on it. Dr. White is known for saying that if a doctrine cannot stand the test of cross-examination, then it is not a worthwhile doctrine. And the inconsistency is the mark of a failed argument. Demonstrating their inconsistency was my proudest moment in that debate. Him having to appeal to Evan to get him out of it was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful in my eyes.
Okay. So again, we're gonna peel back, right, the curtain. We're gonna see what happened behind the scenes. So let's go to McClanahan's blog. Here it is right here. So Evan McClanahan. On March 7th of 2024, First Lutheran, and you have to excuse me if I stumble over my words. I have dyslexia. Not making excuses, just telling you what's up. First Lutheran Houston hosted a debate between Leighton Flowers and James White on the question, does John 6:44 teach unconditional election? As the pastor of the church, I served as a host and moderator. The participants largely agreed on the debate topic before I got involved. The participants largely agreed on the debate topic before I got involved. I did help iron out the details of the format, the date, etc. And there was a contract agreed by both parties. But for the most part, I was simply host of the event. Usually a moderator is a little more than a timekeeper, and that was true for most of the debate. But during the cross-examination, I was asked to make a judgment call. I asked that particular line of questioning came to an end so we can get back to the immediate topic at hand. For that, I was politely criticized by Dr. Flowers for favoring Dr. White, essentially providing cover to avoid an uncomfortable issue, so I'd like to respond. First, what was the debate about? Well, the title suggests it was limited to one text and one issue. It was not only about the doctrine of unconditional election in the abstract, but whether or not John 6:44 teaches that doctrine. What is the doctrine? Unconditional election, the U in Calvinism's tulip, teaches that because man is saved by grace of God through faith, man plays no role in his salvation. If grace can be demanded or earned, it isn't grace. Therefore, there are no conditions that can be achieved to salvation. It is the result of God's sovereign decree. There is a dark side of the doctrine, though. The critics of Calvinism often press that reprobation. If the election is unconditional, then doesn't that mean that before man was born, he's already been predestined to either heaven or hell? What kind of God does that? Therefore, the critic of Calvinism teaches that man's election is not unconditional, but rather conditioned on the response to the call to repent and believe. In this debate that played out when the claim that those who had listened and learned from the Father were those who had fulfilled the necessary conditions to come to Jesus. It can be rhetorically and emotionally powerful to speak to this supposed dark side of Calvinism. All that needs to be done is to paint Calvinists as a defender of the doctrine that would have God place otherwise innocent souls in hell because they are not elect. In the debate on Calvinism in the abstract, those may be a fair question to ask if done in a manner that does not smack of gotcha tactics or outright criticism. But that was not a debate on Calvinism in the abstract. It was an extremely limited topic from the word go. If it wasn't, the debate probably would not have happened in the first place. And this actually, just going to stop right there. Kohl, when he first originally challenged us to the debate, he wanted to go full-fledged, just Christianity versus Gnosticism. And I was like, nope, no way. I don't know enough about Gnosticism. And honestly, I'm not a professional Christian. Like, you're going to ask me something I might not know, some minutia I might not have an answer for, and I have to go look up. So we're going to debate this one thing and one thing alone, and that's it. So Dr. White and Dr. Flowers debated Romans 9 in 2016, and White has acknowledged that there was not sufficient focus on Romans in that exchange, which is true, and that's actually a lot of people said that. Whether the critique is fair or not, to ensure that a most exact topic would be focused on, only one verse was chosen and agreed for the debate, John 6:44. Yes, it would be expected that other verses surrounding John 6:44 would be referenced, and perhaps some verses from other chapters of John and perhaps the Bible at large. This came up with Jeremiah 31, 34, I believe 34, Isaiah, I want to say some verses in Isaiah that were 43, I think it's 43. Anyway, I don't speak very well off the top of my head, but I definitely know the verses, those verses in Jeremiah came into play. But the debate topic was chosen and agreed to precisely to force a particular question to be answered. And an answer that, by the way, is essentially a yes or a no. This is a debate about what one, a handful of others, depending on how the exegesis is done, versus say regarding one theological question. Secondary effects on that question, like the end result of unconditional or conditional election, are just that, secondary. It may be that unconditional election gives rise to the variety of unseemly or tragic by human standards effects, like non-elect young children dying in the eternal fates unknown. It may be that the Calvinist is unwilling to speak for God by promising that every child who dies more or less automatically goes to heaven, though they would not say that they are going to hell either. Either way, those are secondary issues that are emotionally charged to the point of cynicism or fallacy. It could be argued that a well is poisoned when it is suggested that Calvinism in some way approves of dead children not being among the elect. When all the Calvinist is seeking to do is honor God's sovereignty and salvation. So I chose not to allow a line of questioning regarding the secondary effects of the doctrine of unconditional election. For this, it was said that Dr. White hid behind his friend, the moderator. No, it was a judgment call, not a favor. It is tangentially related to the topic of unconditional election, but the focus of the debate was a very narrowly chosen for a reason. There was over 30 minutes of speaking time for each speaker to make their points. But during the cross-examination, I did not think it right to press such an issue, especially given its emotional weight that had not been brought up in previous statements and or rebuttals. If you disagree, you are welcome to disagree with me for the judgment call, but to say Dr. White hid behind that is unfair to him. So this, so you got to ask yourself a question: Is Clenhan, is he a trustworthy narrator? Right? I would say yes. So I just want to bring up the point, Leighton, Dr. Flowers, you agreed to debate John 6:44. And you just admitted, hey, I brought it up and held his feet to the fire because Calvinists are inconsistent on this point and isn't a good argument. Okay. All right. Let's take a look. There are Baptist Calvinists and then there are Presbyterian Calvinists. There's even like Reformed Methodists. I didn't know that. I don't see how you could I don't know. Anyway, yeah, there are all types of Calvinists, and Calvinists, just like provisionalists, are not a monolith. Okay, so if the same argument could be, no, not every provisionalist is a premillennial dispensationalist. Some of them could be all millennial, right? So they're not a monolith. Okay, so neither are Calvinists, right? We're not a monolith. The 1689 Confession, the Baptist Faith and Message 1689, and the Westminster Confession are very similar. Now, some would say they're like, 95, 96%, almost the same document. But Flowers agreed to this. I mean, he agreed to the debate. He knew what was going to happen. And I would just say, I don't want to like get out my Malix Bones. I don't want to do my Alex Jones impersonation, but, is this whole, is it a conspiracy or whatever between these two guys? It's obviously not. The debate was over John 6:44. This is support unconditional election, not what happens to babies. With that said, as a dad, all right, as a dad who is married to his wife he loves very much for 17 years, as a couple, and Desiree's not here, but I'm going to speak for her. We lost a child, so this is relevant. I don't know these guys, right? I don't know if these guys on the Provisionalist channel are married or have kids. But I am married. I have 4 children. One's deceased. He died as an infant. So I would like to share my perspective with you on that.